Дякую за запрошення. This kind of feels really comfortable. Я була дуже нервова і дуже така, коли тут приїжджала, а вступила в ті двері і відразу так трошки розслабилася. So thank you. This place has that effect. I hope not just on me, but on all of you as well. It's a great pleasure to be back at UCU. For me, this is a place of reflection, a place to soak up some inspiration, a place to be reminded of what can be accomplished when one has vision and works hard, and a place to connect with some of the brightest minds, old and young, in the country. Andriy has asked me to speak today on the topic of leadership resilience. I'm really delighted to do so, but I hope you're not expecting an academic lecture. I'm not an academic, but I am a practitioner, and these days exercising my resilience is an everyday effort. Але все ж таки, я тут перед вами такою чудовою аудиторією стою, треба бодай щось мудрого сказати, so I hope тут щось мудрого є для вас. Yesterday, I had the privilege to listen in on a phone call between Canada's new foreign minister, Mélanie Joly, and your own foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba. Minister Joly noted the evolving security situation in Ukraine and on Ukraine's borders and asked him, how are you? And this was like gold for me. He answered like this. He said, in 2014, people called Ukrainians resilient. And we didn't really know what that meant. Today, people ask us how we are doing, and we say we are resilient. We know what it means now. Likewise, back in 2008 or so, I was a senior director working on national security policy in the government of Canada. It was still the fairly fresh aftermath of 9/11. The ministry I was working for was newly created, and we needed a way to communicate our national security objectives. As policy drafters, we started to use the term resilience, but often got kind of quizzical looks from senior managers and from communications experts who wondered if Canadians would know what that means. My experience in the years since has proved to me that my sense of what we meant by the term resilience was in fact very accurate. Resilience is not longevity or stamina. Resilience is not sheer strength. Rather, resilience is the quality of being stressed to the brink without breaking, and then bouncing back to normal function. A simple illustration is a metal or a wooden ruler. You know what a ruler is? I should have brought one. You can bend it, and when you let it go, a good quality ruler goes back to being straight, and it operates as you expect it to. You can measure something. It has a bit of a curve in it. When you let it go, well, maybe you can still make it work for you, but it'll require a little bit more. But if you bend a metal or a wooden ruler all the way into a fold, it will be severely compromised, if not broken. A metal ruler will be stretched, so you can't measure properly anymore. A wooden ruler will be splintered, and neither will work as a tool of measurement. You will not be able to use it as you once did, and maybe you won't be even able to put it back together. Dear friends, as leaders, we have an operational imperative to maintain the resilience of our organizations. And that organization could be your family. It could be your company. It could be you and your partner in a startup. It could be your leadership center or your business school. But more importantly, we have a moral responsibility to ensure the resilience of our employees and of ourselves, because people break. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I have been to that edge. So what I'd like to share with you today are some practical ideas and my personal reflections on how to stay resilient by managing stress and keeping that bounce back quality healthy. But let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know the context from which I have learned. I've been a senior executive in the government of Canada for about 12 years, responsible for national security policy, Canada's visa regime, the operations of a cabinet committee and related advice to the Prime Minister, designing and implementing major elements of Canada's feminist foreign policy all over the world, and coordinating Government of Canada responses to natural disasters. For the last 2 years exactly, I have been in Ukraine. By the way, my first Vistup in Ukraine was almost exactly 2 years ago in this room. Wow, I just realized that. I've been here for 2 years. You likely have a sense of what being an ambassador entails. But what you may not know is that as ambassador, I'm also responsible for the health and safety and the well-being of all my Canadian staff, their spouses, and their children. This means their school, their housing, their cars, their marriages, their mental health, their physical health, everything. It's a big responsibility, but you can imagine how much more interesting and difficult it became under COVID. I'm also the wife of a man for 25 years now and a mother of 3 children. My career was lively when they were small and livelier when they were teenagers, and forced me into absentia these last 2 years. In Ottawa, I was active in my community. I spent a few years on the parent council at my kids' school. I taught singing for years at a Ukrainian children's arts camp, and also at the Canadian Seminary for the UGCC. That's UHEKETSE. I led the choir in my parish and regularly coordinated volunteers for a local soup kitchen. I feel somewhat uncomfortable talking about myself, but I think it's important for you to understand my composition if I'm going to talk about resilience and give you any credible advice. So with that introduction out of the way, let me share one more thing before I get into prescriptions and life hacks. To appreciate the importance of resilience, it's worth understanding the basics of how long-term periods of stress and psychological strain affect cognition, how the brain works and changes when a person is under prolonged stress. Now, this is not an academic explanation or medical explanation, but I've learned enough about this. I think I can put it into lay terms, and you can Google any of this later on. Rational cognition is the job of the frontal and prefrontal cortices, or lobes of the brain. In evolutionary terms, it's the newest part of our brain to evolve. That part regulates motivation and attention and is especially important to planning appropriate responses to internal and external stimuli. It deals with complexity, nuance, and cognitive flexibility. It is responsible for future planning, self-management, and decision-making. When something causes an adrenaline rush, strong fear or anxiety, decision-making shifts to the amygdala, where fight or flight decisions are made extremely quickly. When my kids were little and we were trying to explain this to them, we called it the animal part of the brain. It is responsible for processing emotions related to fear and anxiety, aggression, and anger. It is important that the amygdala function properly to ensure that we have the proper reaction to threatening information. However, in long periods of stress, adrenaline keeps pumping, and the amygdala essentially hijacks the frontal lobe. The animal part takes over from the part that perceives nuance, has perspective, exercises sound judgment, picks up weak signals, evaluates risks, plans. The brain starts to evaluate everything in your environment for what kind of threat it poses, not whether it poses a threat, but what kind of threat it poses. When this stress reaction is stuck in the on position, the result is that we lose empathy, we see everything in black and white terms, we lose our ability to plan for the future, our creativity and cognitive flexibility is diminished, we can experience personality changes even. The frontal lobe gets hijacked. And so begins a vicious circle. What does it look like? We get angry at colleagues, we lose patience, we succumb to dangerous biases, and we misread signals. We work harder and we plan less. We feel sick. We see less of our kids and our spouses, and when we are with them, the quality of the time together is hugely diminished. We are not present to them. The results of all this is a bunch of bad decisions and strained relationships that cause more stress. And then we blame others and we ignore important information. And then we make more lousy decisions. The rift between us and everything that can help us make good decisions and be healthy people grows. And I haven't even mentioned the physical effects of prolonged stress on our weight, on our heart rate, our blood pressure, our digestion, our skin, our nails, on addiction, and yes, even on libido. In short, we start to lose ourselves and everything that made us good and successful human beings to date. The problem with life, and the extra problem of leadership, is that we cannot control our environment or external stimuli. Moreover, people of ambition, which I suspect most of you are, invite stress and invite the unknown and willingly do risky things. Few people have the option to live a stress-free life. So instead, the secret to lifelong success, whatever comes your way, is the ability to bounce back from that stress, to restore balanced cognitive function, and to be whole again. The secret is resilience. I believe there are two aspects to resilience. First, explicitly recognizing, understanding what we are made of and who we are. Are we metal or are we wood? And then second, deliberately preparing for stressors. Heat the metal, soak the wood. Allow me to expand on 7 elements. I'll try to do it quickly. First, strong values build resilience. Our values are the strongest guideposts in our life. They may come from our upbringing, from tough lessons, or from deep reflection. Maybe we get them from religion or faith or a role model. Maybe we have fashioned them deliberately. Values have their locus in the evolved brain. The animal brain has only one value: survival. When we articulate the values by which we live, even if it's to ourselves, we have something to measure ourselves against. We have a code that unites us, and we have the source of moral and practical reinforcement. Values are important because they define who you are and give your life a framework. Long-term stress can show up as compromise of our values. For example, we stop respecting people. You valued time with your family, and suddenly you can't remember the last time you had dinner with your kids and your spouse. Your values are being compromised. And when we aren't living according to our values, we are losing ourselves. But by knowing what we value most, we know what we have to return to, what we need to bounce back to, what we need to prioritize. Second is monitoring our own resilience. This is crucial. And I think it's especially crucial for leaders because so many people look to you. Again, is it in your family, in your startup, in your small part of a large organization like the Ukrainian Armed Forces or the school? Think of this monitoring as a gas tank. Think of your resilience as a gas tank. Would any of you drive a car without regard for what the gas gauge is saying? It would be a total gamble. And sooner or later, you'd end up stranded on the side of the road with a car that won't go any further. You don't want to be that car. So pretend you have a gas tank in you. What fills it up? I'm talking here about holidays, time with people who love you, time alone, time at a party, time reading a book, singing in a choir, hikes in nature, prayer, meditation, spontaneity, meticulous planning, a tidy house, exercise. Conversely, what depletes you? Holidays with your family, time alone, time at a party, lack of a plan, a messy house, exercise. It's different for everyone. My presence here today is a good example of my own calculation of my gas tank. Andriy will know. When he asked me to be here, I was delighted. I love coming to UCU. I love engaging with Ukrainians outside the cave bubble, and I'm passionate about leadership. These are all things that fill me up. I was also very hesitant to accept because finding time to come up with a good speech, writing speeches, and writing speeches in time to have them translated all deplete me. I would have to forego time with my husband, which is a big value compromise. All of this would have to happen at a time when, frankly, my gas tank is running close to empty. I didn't have a true summer vacation. I had a wonderful visit from my parents for 2.5 weeks in September. I had a grueling October. At the embassy, we managed a massive rotation of Canadian personnel. COVID is still an everyday concern at the embassy, and the security situation today in Ukraine is demanding a lot of time and can be unnerving. I'm just back from a trip to Canada, so I've been jet lagged for the better part of 3 weeks. And in the next 2 weeks, I already know that I will have to attend a long string of evening and weekend events, including the annual Ukul Gala Ball. Yeah. My next break will come on December 22nd, when I hear the door of the airplane locked shut and I'm on my way home to my family for Christmas. But I told myself, if I can give this speech in English, if I could make the trip as short as possible, if I could refrain from trying to become an academic expert on resilience, and if I could do it on a weekend when my husband was busy with other things, then it might be okay. I even decided that I should get to Lviv by train because it would guarantee I had time set aside to write my speech, which I did. So I decided I could turn this at least into a net zero effort. And I picked up valuable speech planning time during my sleepless jet lag night in Odessa 2 nights ago. What fills you up? What depletes you? How full is your gas tank right now? And please remember that alcohol and drugs is like putting diesel into a gas car. It doesn't work and it's extremely costly. So protecting my resilience has become an everyday consideration for me. And knowing the signs of my weakening resilience, my fading ability to bounce back, is especially crucial. I mentioned at the outset that I have been to the brink. I know what the warning signs are, and I hope I can always heed them, because I know people who have gone over the edge, and like the broken ruler, they never work the same again. Speaking of other people, this is my third point. Every person's resilience is different. In case knowing oneself is not complicated enough, it is crucial to understand how other people work. I think that as leaders, there are 2 things we need to remember. First, not everyone has the same breaking point. Some can bend further than us, some can bend less. Some bounce back faster, others not so much. As a boss, as a partner, you're responsible for a lot of stressors, deadlines, levels of ambition, travel, weekend work, a respectful work environment. Do you know how to calibrate to the capacity of your staff? Do you know what unhealthy stress looks like in your key partners? Second, if you have leaders working for you, are you able to monitor how hard they push their people? What kind of environment do the people working for you create for others? Is it one that enhances resilience or one that wears it down? I spend a lot of time these days monitoring others' resilience, and I rely on structure to get me and my team through one day at a time. So let's talk about the 4th element, organizing for resilience. It was brilliant that Sophia gave the presentation that she did just a few minutes ago, because a lot of what you just talked to speaks to the structure that allows an organization to be resilient. But let me start with organizational diversity. An organization that deliberately includes people who see the world in different ways, who come from different backgrounds, who have different kinds of experiences, that is a stronger organization. Ensuring diversity must be a deliberate pursuit, because you don't find a lot of diversity in the mainstream. It's kind of definitional. You need to go to the margins and decide to include people who are different. And the basic building block of this is gender diversity. If your organization is all men or all women, your organization has major weaknesses. you are missing out on opportunities, not just to enhance your bottom line, but also to maintain your resilience. Does your organization have a plan to ensure a diverse workforce? Ask yourself. The next way you can organize for resilience is to have values. You spoke about them. Does your organization have a values statement? I talked about personal values. These are organizational ones. The Public Service of Canada does. Our values are respect for democracy, respect for people, integrity, stewardship, and excellence. We are held to account for the exercise of these values, and they keep us behaving at times when stressors might easily take us off course. So that's the organizational diversity and organizational values. Then there's your vision and your mission. You have one, no doubt, but do your employees know what it is? Do your partners know what it is? Or do you have it buried somewhere in corporate documents? Knowing what the end goal is allows everyone to see opportunities and risks and to anticipate them and innovate ways of succeeding and thus stay resilient, able to absorb shocks. If you are the only one who knows, you will not spot the dangers to your business. You will be surprised, your people will stop succeeding, they will be demoralized, talent will walk out the door, you will be stressed, your employees will be stressed, you will make poor decisions, and at that point, it's too late to be talking about vision because that's not the part of your brain that's working anymore. Resilience requires that everyone understand organization's vision. Next up is your organization's strategic planning, and it's a key to resilience for one reason. Every strategic planning exercise entails a SWOT, an analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I don't think I need to explain the value of that. Also, strategic planning takes planning, and planning doesn't work in stressful times because the planning part of the brain is occupied. This needs to be done in advance. The next structure is performance management framework. It pertains to organizational objectives as well as personal performance. This is something that I value hugely and I have benefited from a lot. There's the theory and there's the practice and the process. We can talk more about that later if you're interested. Now for the fifth element, advance warning. When I was working on a new national security policy for Canada, one of the debates was how much to tell Canadians about the threats that face them. Would people be scared? Would they accuse the government of fear mongering? Would a description of the terrorist or foreign interference threat tear at the fabric of our multicultural society? In the end, the decision was to be frank, but to choose words and descriptions carefully, to use inclusive language, and to point out the danger that the reaction to a terrorist attack could do more damage in our society than the terrorist attack itself. Inside government, we thought ahead. We worked up language and protocols. We knew that someday we would need to react to an attack, so we proactively reinforced the frontal lobe. We talked about the importance of inclusion. We talked about the impact of language. We talked about preserving respect for all Canadians. And we talked about building resilience. Likewise, over the past 20 months, we at the embassy have been able to manage the extremely stressful situation because we were constantly looking ahead. There were days when we couldn't see more than one day ahead, and we had to fix that. Looking ahead allowed us to prepare for new waves and lockdowns, and it allowed us to look forward to relief, whether it was vaccine arrival timelines or kids going back to school. For example, this past summer, we knew that things would get worse again this fall at the end of October. So we packed a lot of work, travel, and holidays into September and the first half of October. People had a break and they were able to get out to visit their projects, something they really, really missed. We'll get a lot of gratification going and speaking to the people who are implementing their projects in the field. We all put some gas in our tanks, knowing that there would be a lockdown. Because we had a good handle on risk, we were able to hold 2 pub nights, very important, where, notwithstanding what I said about drinking earlier, where about 100 people could come, have a drink, chat, and just feel normal. We worked hard to anticipate the negative and to think in advance about our reaction. So let me add another element of organizational resilience to my previous list, and that's emergency response planning. Have you thought about what happens in your life if communication goes down? What happens if your building becomes inaccessible? What do you do if a major security situation arises in your city in the middle of the workday? An emergency response plan thinks ahead, allows you to discuss ahead, reduces stress when something does happen, and protects your assets. In Canada, as diplomats and people who travel to dangerous parts of the world, one of the trainings we get is called hazardous environment training. We get taken away to a military base and they make us do very difficult and interesting things. You drive up to a building that has just been hit by a rocket and it's a mass casualty event. You and your 5 colleagues have to figure out what to do. They simulate kidnapping, having a hood on your head, being thrown into a car, being thrown on a cold concrete floor in the dark and being yelled at. The purpose of these things isn't so much to know exactly what to do. The purpose of these exercises is understand how you're going to react and to anticipate that reaction when should something bad happen to you. In sum, looking ahead keeps today and today's challenges in perspective and preloads judgments. All of this works to prevent a going over the edge and a hijacking of the amygdala. It takes away the anxiety that comes with staring into the unknown and reinforces resilience. Now, one last element, more of a mention than a long explanation, something to be aware of and for you to look into. Put bluntly, stress messes with hormones. Women have a more dynamic hormonal system than men. This means women have additional factors to manage to stay resilient. I'm not going to get into this, but if you're interested in the long-term effects of stress on women's resilience, I have a name of a great podcast you can listen to. It's good for men and for women. Okay, that's the heavy stuff. Let me summarize quickly. Know yourself and what your values are. Have a mission and a strategic plan. Have tools that help you measure and adjust, that keep everyone on the same page. Listen to yourself and watch for your own worrying behaviors. Do the things that fill you up. Treat the body well. Exercise. Understand hormones. When your organization is being stressed, increase the frequency of communication and information sharing. Take time to get to know people in your organization and understand the signs that they are under stress. As much as possible, have the next tough time on your horizon and pace yourself accordingly, taking maximum advantage of the good times. And don't ask people to do heavy frontal lobe work when they are overstressed. It may break them. Don't expect yourself to do it either. But do remind yourself of what you already know and have planned, values, and vision. My personal life hacks, or at least those that I'm willing to share in a public venue. Little things can be big things. Thank God the beauty salons never shut down and I could always go for a manicure. Always have something to look forward to. Always, always. Don't take a vacation that is stressful to plan. There's no shame in doing the same thing for your vacation over and over. Sleep, 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 sleep. Sleep is your friend. And if you can't sleep, occupy your mind by thinking about the good things you did that day. There are always more than you can think of. Reflect. Find the silence and the stillness. This is where my faith tradition has played a very important role. In the silence, your emotions come up. That forces you to confront them, which forces you to make sense of them, which forces you to learn, which allows you to bounce back better. And if I may, I'd like to take just a few more minutes to talk about societal resilience. and the role that you, as strong leaders, can play in building it. I don't think I need to elaborate on why societal resilience is important in Ukraine. We are seeing and feeling the need for it right now. But I recently read a very interesting piece of public opinion research conducted by the Institute za Майбутнє, the Ukrainian Institute for the Future. It's called Portret українців очима українців. There are two main conclusions I'd like to share with you. Here's the first one. And this is a public opinion survey of about 5,000 Ukrainians from 5 major regions, as well as a number of focus groups. Серед головних висновків потрібно виділити, що ключова проблема українців як нації сьогодні полягає у тому, що у нас немає розуміння майбутнього. Тобто головним недоліком є те, що питання майбутнього не артикулюється державою, адже на цьому рівні дане поняття також досить розмите. Тож у зв'язку з тим, що розуміння майбутнього відсутнє майже у більшості українців, варто зрозуміти, що така нація має величезні психологічні проблеми, it's their words, not mine, що унеможливлює її розвиток та самоідентифікацію. I think we could have a very good discussion about where the psychological issues referred to in this quote may stem from, especially on this 4th Saturday of November when we commemorate the Holodomor. But we don't have time, so let me just ask, can businesses and non-governmental institutions, universities, become the place where Ukrainians learn to think about the future in a real way? Can you offer learning opportunities to your employees about things like stress management or trauma? Can you do more talking explicitly about the components of strategic planning? I know that so much of what I have learned in my professional context has translated into better habits and tendencies in my personal life and my life in the community. I have become more resilient. The second point is the following. From the results of a focus group discussions about the Ukrainian dream, Українська мрія. Люди схильні малювати безхмарний ідеал, а у його відсутності звинувачують виключно владу, не себе. Таким чином, ці тенденції свідчать про те, що українці здатні аналізувати лише наслідки, а не думають про передумови тих негараздів, які є в Україні. Зокрема, українці схильні перекладати відповідальність на лідерів, не говорячи про власну роль у формуванні успішної країни. Так, жоден з респондентів не висловив своє бачення вирішення ситуації, але включало відповідальність з боку народу. Тож, на думку більшості, єдине, що треба зробити, це обрати правильного лідера, який має усе зробити за нас. Ви знаєте, я знаю, що це не демократія. Can your organization become microcosms of the Ukrainian dream, where each person feels they are connected to the success of their country? Can people learn to take responsibility for the недоліки? Can you create a space for the transformation of the psyche? Both of these conclusions struck me because they speak to the building blocks of societal resilience. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree with Minister Kuleba that you are resilient people. Ukrainians have proven themselves in crisis. Ukrainians are nothing if not survivors. But I think we all want to do more than simply survive. And the excerpts I have shared indicate that there is room to grow resilience, to learn to bounce back better, to rehabilitate the capacity to think about the future and to see oneself as a part, see that one has a part to play in success. As leaders, consider this portrait of Ukrainians and how you might strengthen it. There's a saying in English that whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This is all the more true if you are deliberate in thinking about stress and resilience. Congratulations for taking the time out to do so today. I have benefited hugely from little bits of advice I've picked up over my years. I hope something I have said will become meaningful in your life. I'm happy to talk now about any elements of this: the spiritual, the psychological, the practical, the governmental, maybe even the theoretical. So thank you.